Yeah, appreciate you having me. Of course, I've known Mr. Pygott for a long time now through Jason, and got to see his unbelievable dance moves down in New Orleans at a wedding, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that was part of my weight loss, but we're glad to have Raleigh McCammon with us today, live from Rocky Top, in
That's
Knoxville,
right.
Tennessee, Gulfstream Capital, part of the sports department in financial and retirement and asset protection. This is our business law class at Velma Jackson High School. I've got a room full here with me, and we're recording this for our friends at Ridgeland High School, Madison Central High School, Germantown High School, and for our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Now, before we get into all your what all it is you do, we like to talk about the education background of all of our guests because we have them from around the country. So, you are a graduate of University of Tennessee there in Knoxville. So, talk a little bit about your decision to go to Tennessee, how that atmosphere was, and how that prepared you for your current career because your degree was in sports management and business.
Yeah, so when I was applying for schools, I really had a couple schools I really wanted to go to, and kind of made a decision. Thought I was going to go to Wake Forest. Got in, everything was good, and then it came time to actually go somewhere else, and decided, let's just stay at home. I could get a scholarship at UT instead of paying a bunch of money at Wake, and was like, let's do that. So decided on UT, and kind of knew from the beginning it was going to be sport management and something in finance. And with the sport management degree at Tennessee, you get a business minor. So pretty easy to take a few extra courses and get another degree as well. And it was awesome. The first year, as college always is, was kind of tough, adjusting to the lifestyle and being on your own and having no one telling you, hey, you have to go to class, but you need to. But it was great. Loved every minute of it. Met some of my lifelong friends there, including Jason. It's how I met you, and Nate and everybody. So yeah, I really did love it. Coursework was difficult but fair, and yeah. So getting into that with the sport management background, and obviously some of the basketball background as well. Kind of combining everything. I've worked in basketball since I was 14. Is the first year I was a head coach of a travel team.
Yeah.
So I'm 31 now. So I've been doing it 17 years on the AAU circuit and all that good stuff. Yeah. And so getting the opportunity to come to Gulfstream, and I'd worked in financial advising before, and then Gulfstream came to me with the opportunity to kind of lead the sports and entertainment division. So I took that and kind of ran with it.
That's awesome. Now, before we get into the Gulfstream, we'd be remiss if we did not tell your story that made national headlines, because I actually read about you on ESPN before I met you. So just for everybody watching, as a joke, when you were in college, you entered yourself into the NBA draft.
And I did after my freshman year.
Yeah, and you used stats according to Xbox 360, and you actually had NBA teams call you about a tryout.
Well, yeah, so it was kind of wild. So it all started when I guess I was supposed to have a meeting at UT one morning about becoming a manager. So the night before, I go, and I didn't know anything about this, right? So I show up to the meeting. Well, the night before, we had a bunch of guys get arrested on the Tennessee basketball team, and it was for various, things. So I didn't know this at the time because the news hadn't come out. So I walk into this meeting, and they mistakenly asked me to be a walk-on. I thought I was going to go, like, basically applying to mop up sweat, and they asked me to join the team. To this day, I don't know if they thought I was someone else or if it was a mistake or what happened. I just know that I was smart enough not to tell them they were messing up. So I knew that they were going to figure it out sooner rather than later, which they did. But by that time, I had declared myself eligible for the 2010 NBA draft as a joke. And it kind of took on a mind of its own. And really, I was just trying to be funny and do like this one-off thing that just kind of, it last a day or two and then it was over. That's not what happened. So I wrote this letter to the NBA basically saying I'd spent, the last few days as a as a walk-on, and I felt like the next logical step in my career path was indeed the NBA, which of course made no sense to anybody whatsoever, but I thought it was funny, so we're going to go with it. Well, they apparently took me seriously and decided to send me the official paperwork. So it's like 3 pages long. The first 2 pages are just like basic information. The last page is your college statistics, which obviously I had none. But I put 30 points, 20 rebounds, and 20 assists per game. And I put an asterisk by each of them. And I put these stats are estimated guesses from games played on Xbox. And again, I'm not trying to trick anyone. I'm just trying to be funny. And again, somebody at the NBA decides that this is an appropriate thing to do and contacts me and says, "Hey, we need a highlight tape. Do you have one?" I was like, "No, I don't, but I can make one." So I had a buddy with a terrible, like very old, like video camera. So this was 2010. And the only thing I knew to do was to have him like lay on the ground under the basket and like angle this camera up. So it looks like I was doing all this on a regulation goal, but in reality, we lowered the rims to 8 feet. So I'm doing all these dunks and stuff that I can't do on a full 10-foot rim. And the NBA decided that that was good enough, and they took me. So that's when I started making some headlines. I guess it started here in Knoxville. I did a local interview here. Nashville picked it up, and then I went on ESPN radio, and that's kind of when everything went wild. So featured on ESPN radio, which was bizarre because why anyone wanted to talk to me, I don't really know. But had a couple teams. I'm going to not say names just because of, I don't know, with YouTube and everything. But yeah, it was 2 teams, an Eastern Conference team, a Western Conference team that may or may not be run by a living legend, so to speak, hint, hint, reached out and didn't realize it was a joke. And it's like, no, I'm not good at basketball. Like I can sit in the corner and knock down a couple threes, but my defense looks like I'm at the running of the Bulls, just waving these people on. It's just free layups all around. But it's like Oprah giving out cars. You get a layup. But so I'm like, this is like, people believe this. Like, what do I do? So I had one team after the draft. So before the draft, actually, I'll back up a little bit. NBA.com releases the names of all the accepted entrants, and they break it down by your college class. So it was seniors, juniors, sophomores, freshmen. Category 5 was international prospects. And in the class of 2010, there was a 6th category, which just said unknown individual, and it was just me. Even though I was technically a freshman in college, I was the unknown individual. And there was one team that did approach me about acquiring a draft pick to use on me. Obviously, it ended up not happening, but I was really excited about it. A, because I think it'd be hilarious if I got drafted. And 2, like the guys on ESPN, like Jay Billis, Jay Williams, all these guys that run the draft, the only video that they could have shown if my name popped up on the screen was this fake highlight tape I made on a children's goal. Because that's all there was. But unfortunately, that didn't come to fruition. But I did, along the way, get to meet a lot of really, really cool people.
Yeah.
I still go to Las Vegas for the summer league every year. Still maintain a lot of NBA contracts. And oddly enough, like that stupid decision, like just trying to be funny, landed me my career, which is pretty cool because they were looking for someone with NBA connections. I was like, well, I'm a former player. So it's funny. I tell everyone to please refer to me as former NBA legend, even though, no, I never played. Like I said, I am not good at all, but I did declare for the draft and became a little bit of a 15 minutes of fame overnight online viral. That was my viral moment, I guess you could say, before that was
Well,
really a thing.
that's still quite a story, but that is also an example of how networking can be so useful. Now, I know you deal, and we've talked a little bit about here in the class about the protection of assets, the protection of image, and also, even for non-athletes, how important retirement is, because like me and yours, our grandparents and some of these kids' grandparents, the Social Security was always there. That's not the case anymore. So kind of what you do is these athletes, independent contractors, you help them with investments and financial planning, because the protection of assets for every person is extremely vital, especially if you're a high wealth individual. So talk a little bit about how retirement planning works, what steps you need to take, and why you really need to pay attention to that the more money you make and the older you get.
Absolutely. So, I mean, with athletes, right, there's a lot of things that come with that a lot of people don't get, right? So they have more people, like everyone wants to work in sports, right? So everyone wants a piece of these guys. So they've always got people after them, after their money. And there's a lot of shady people that are in business and trying to make money for themselves and take advantage of these guys with the horrible investment ideas and plans. And really, like, there's a guy like Tim Duncan lost like 15 or something $million from a guy. And Tim Duncan's a smart guy, like went to Wake, like knows what he's doing. But so these guys, like, we have to be careful so what we do is we call ourselves the family CFO. So we sit on the same side of the table, and basically if someone calls and asks them for money, we're the bad guy. We're like, they say, no, Raleigh has to approve that. And obviously I'm going to say no, right? Which is a way for them to maintain the relationship and for us to have the best interest of the client in mind. But what we do is, so we do your typical financial advising, financial planning, but we really do it endowment style. So we're more diversified. So as a normal place, you might have maybe 4 or 5 asset classes, some stocks, some mutual funds, some bonds. Yeah, we're going to be more in like the 12 to 15 asset class range.
Wow.
So very diversified. So we have an income fund where you're basically invested in real estate that produces income, a beach house, a New York City apartment. We're big in the farmland fund, which surprisingly is very, very profitable. We've got some in-house funds as well that are really diversified, and it gives the athlete opportunity to see their account fluctuating day to day. And really, so it's tough because to gain trust too, right? So we have to prove that. So like, one thing I love about our firm is like we have a pretty strict like no suits policy. Like we go meet with people, like I'm dressed up more now to talk to you all than I would be to go to work. Like I will show up typically in like white athletic shorts and a nice t-shirt, something with the company logo on it. Because really, like these days, like guys don't want suits, they want someone they can trust, and that knows has their best interest in mind, which is us, which is great to be on the side of one of the people that's doing it the right way. But managing your money is so important, and learning about the different types of investing, the different opportunities, products, so to speak. But I'm not a big believer in the product side of it. I don't do we don't do any insurance at our company because at our firm, because that's sales, and we're not in the business of selling anything. We're here to help.
Yeah, and even if you're not a high wealth individual, I always say, let's say you just have a regular job, but that job offers to match whatever your retirement contribution is. Turning down money like that is absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure Tennessee as well has a great deferred compensation plan where once you retire, you can put that money in addition that you set aside. So, like we said, times have changed in the last 30 years where our grandparents could just get the Social Security check. With the aging population, that's not something people can depend on. And when it comes to retirement, it's not something you say, okay, I'm retired and the money's just there. The money has to be there. And also, just for regular individuals, and especially these athletes you deal with, people will prey on you. Especially, we are a rural area. A lot of people in the rural areas of Mississippi may not have been educated on things to look for. So that's where people like you come into play, and to educate yourselves on things that can be a red flag when it comes to investments.
Absolutely. Yeah. There are a lot of very terrible people and products. Like I really hate the product side of it. Now, some people love them and they're great, and that's on them, and that's awesome. Like if it works for you, that's fantastic. But one of the things that I always stress to people too is when you're picking an advisor, the more I've done this, it's so important for me. Like the way I think, like go with an independent firm. There are people at the big firms that are awesome. Like we have a good friend who's at a big firm, and he's really, really good at his job. But when you're at a big firm, like I don't want to name names, but you are basically stuck to, in some places, not all, stuck to their funds and their products. So you really can't, like what we can do is if Goldman Sachs has the best short-term fund, we can get in that. If somebody else has the best, bond fund, we can do that. Like we're invested in Skybridge, Anthony Scaramucci's fund. We're in several different, funds like that we can all roll into one portfolio because we're independent. We can basically go seek out the best of the world and put you in that because we have the access to it.
Yeah, and again, even for people that aren't going to be making millions and millions of dollars, it's important to really make good decisions on that because I got high school kids here now that may think, oh, this is dumb, I'm never going to have to deal with this, but you can start saving for retirement at 18 years old. You
can. And max it out, max it out. It's really important. Don't touch it. Just have your rainy day fund for what you need. But when you start investing, don't touch it. Let it ride. I promise you'll be happy in the long run.
Yeah, because as silly as it sounds, starting earlier, that could be 2 or 3 years less you have to work later. I think that's important for people to realize. Instead of retiring at 65, you can retire at 61 or 62. That's 3 more years you get to enjoy your retirement because you started saving the money early. And like we said, in my case, I'm lucky enough to have a job where whatever I put in, the state matches it. So look for things like that. There's little tricks to it to where that money can multiply. And I'm far from an expert, but I do know that not putting any money aside for retirement you're outside of your mind at this point.
Absolutely. They say it's kind of an old saying, but it's true. It's not about timing the market; it's time in the market. So the earlier you start, the longer you are in the market, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, and then and like we said, I'm not an expert, and obviously these kids aren't expected to be experts, but it's important to find people that their job is to have your best interest in this. People like you that are in your company that are there to advocate for the individual.
Right. I always find someone that is willing to, instead of try to sell you something, sit on the same side of the table and evaluate different options with you. Don't go if they're trying to sell you something they can make a big commission on. That should be a red flag, right? So find someone that's going on the journey with you and not sitting across from you, I guess.
Yeah. Now something else we've talked about in this class a little bit is contracts and copyrights. And we talked about the NIL and the NCAA and how that is a big business and a big legal thing because for those who aren't familiar, the whole NIL started with the NCAA, the former NCAA players suing EA Games on a video game because they were having their name, their image, people that looked like them in the game, and people that were playing like them, having their jersey numbers, and they were not making any money off of it. And then the straw that broke the camel's back was when the NCAA wouldn't let the girls from Stanford be on the Wheaties box after they won the gold medal in the Olympics. And then that's where these amateur athletes said, look, you're using our face, you're using our likeness, you're making money off of us. How was that fair and how was that legal? So something else you do is you help people find the NILs as college athletes, because even if they aren't going to go, if a company wants to pay them, they can, but if they're going to use their name and their face, they're going to have to be compensated for it.
Sure. So that's another business that's outside of Gulfstream. It's called Next Level Athletics. And so we started that in August, basically because there's a lot of NIL stuff going on and there's really no rules. It's kind of the wild, wild west. And again, you've got folks out there, not here necessarily, but all over the country that are like promising kids a lot of money and not getting paid. And it's, they say the toothpaste is out of the tube, and it really kind of is. So we think that, or I personally think that Congress is going to step in here at some point and put some guardrails up. I don't know when that'll be, what those guardrails will be, But I do believe that is going to be, because at this point, the NCAA there's not much they can do because they've already just given like a blanket
and they already lost
ruling. They already lost. So
Yeah.
the only folks that can step in and do anything about it is Congress. And I think, there are things that I think will be bipartisan about it. I think one thing right now is international kids can't get paid.
Wow.
And it goes back to visa status, student visas.
I never knew that.
Yeah. So now there are loopholes. Not that we don't do that, because we don't represent any international clients right now. But like what they'll do is they can get paid when they go home to their home countries.
Yeah, and one thing I always say, in this class, nobody's expected to be a legal expert. I mean, most attorneys aren't legal experts, even though they have the credentials. But it's not about what's right and wrong, but it's what's on the dotted line. It's what the law says. And like we said, the NCAA already lost this lawsuit. And, we talk about civil and criminal law. That's a civil suit that they lost, to where they have to allow these young people to negotiate their name, image, and likeness. They're not being paid by the university. They're being paid by a third party. I think that's important to understand too. The university
Correct.
doesn't have any hand in this, but there is they're not, you're not being paid to play. You're being paid for your, to where I know, and even this is even in the small colleges. So if somebody wants to play small college athletics, Division II, Division III, a lot of these apparel companies are paying people even small amounts to wear their stuff at track meets, to wear their stuff when they're swimming, to wear their stuff in cross country, basketball. Even these up and coming shoe companies are having the tights made, where they're paying the kids, a few $100 to wear them. So there are opportunities like that, but again, it's important to not be taken advantage of.
It is, and know your value, know your worth. I mean, a lot of these deals are great. A kid can go and do an appearance and make $500, $1,000, whatever. That's awesome. Like that's what this was meant for, right? To go sign autographs, or be able to make an appearance, go to the car wash, whatever. But I think what kids have to be weary of is the pay-for-play stuff, but also think about the tax implications too. That's something that I fear could be a problem down the road if some of the first wave of kids that got NIL money are audited. That could be an issue. So it's important to, when you get these deals, like have a plan set up for your taxes. And again, I am not an accountant. I'm not a lawyer, but I do know that taxes do exist. So it's very important to be aware of that.
Yeah, and before I get to these students' questions, that's a good point. I forgot about that, because a lot of these, you see stuff on TV. These guys sign these big contracts, but that's a great point. If you, whatever you sign, you're locked into the taxes for that state. So let's say you play for the New Orleans Saints, and you played a game in North Carolina against the Carolina Panthers. You have to pay state tax for the state of North Carolina for that game you played.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to have to pay tax you're going to have to pay the person that prepares that. So, you may see $340 million, but that number drops and drops and drops and drops and drops and drops and drops because of the tax implications. And a lot of athletes and a lot of high wealth individuals and even small wealth individuals get taken advantage of because they sign these things without an advisor, and it winds up costing them billions in tax money.
It does. That's why you see so many guys. Obviously, I mean, a lot of guys want to go, the NBA guys especially, go to Miami, go to Dallas, Spurs, and that's why, because you play fewer games. You play more games in states without a state income tax at those teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I do have a few questions from the students. I'll get as many of these as I can.
Yeah.
This first one is, this is a great question. This is Jakia Luckett. She's a junior. And she said, if you were ever taken advantage of financially, what would be the best plan of action to get out of it?
I mean, hire an attorney. Yeah, I mean, we can help get you out of financial trouble, so to speak, with as far as investments go. But if someone else if you got taken advantage of by someone else, I mean, take legal action. Go get them.
Yeah, and if you can prove that you were taken advantage of, you will not be on the hook for that money. I think that's important too. If you really are a victim of a scam of any sort, they have the law, so you are not going to be liable for that money. But it's important that you act fast and find somebody in the legal field that does financial law that would be able to help you get out of that. That's a great point.
Correct. Yeah.
This is Jada Green. She's a sophomore, and she asked, how can a financial investor really help me further my life?
I mean, like you said, you retire early, save money, like set up wealth for kids, grandkids, help you buy a home, all of that stuff. Like, it's so important to have money. So when you retire, you have no money. If you're not, you have no income, how are you going to live? Like, if you've saved and invested and done what you should have done, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But if you haven't, like, you'll be working till good Lord calls you home.
Yeah, and again, it's you don't have to set aside an exorbitant amount of money. I mean, you can if you want to.
No.
But especially if the company or the entity is matching it, that money is going to multiply over years and years and years. It's amazing how much it does without you ever realizing it.
And so many more companies now, even for high school kids, so many more companies are offering jobs now with a match because of COVID. Basically, they can't find work, so they're giving these extra perks. And even high school kids working fast food, work at the golf course, whatever, they're giving a match now.
Yeah. This is a good question. I can't believe I didn't think of this. This is DeMarnez Griffin. He's a senior, and he asked, how do people in the military pay taxes?
That's a great question. I have no idea. I can ask my accountant about that. I have no idea.
Yeah. But that is a great point because
it is.
Your personnel could be in multiple states, multiple countries. So again, even if you are a government employee, you have to know these things because again, even if you're serving our country, you could be on the hook for a lot of money you didn't realize. Now this is a great question. This is Brian McMurtry. He's a senior, and he asked, what reading materials would you suggest for someone about to graduate from high school to be more financially competent?
Ooh. Can I email you a list?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll email you a list of some good stuff. It's tough to rattle them off right here, but I've got a list here. I'll send you.
Absolutely. This is Rodarius Williams. He's a senior, and he asked, what do you feel are the smartest ways to invest your money?
Well, it depends, right? So we always legally have to ask the same three questions when we meet with somebody. All right, what's your risk tolerance? If your account goes down $50, are you going to freak out? When do you need this? Like, what is the goal of this money, and how liquid do you need it? Basically meaning how soon, like if you need cash, like how much are you going to need? When are you going to need it? If this is pure play, like not play money, but money you're setting aside, then your liquidity would be low, right? So I personally, I like hedge funds, and I know that's a big word that scares a lot of people, but really they're all, I love them. I'm not, like I said, I'm not an insurance guy, but that's just for me. So everybody's different, but get you in some growth opportunities. If you're trying to save for the future, I wouldn't. I mean, young people, go more into growth and less in conservative bonds, or T-bills or anything. Go growth. The younger you are, the more percentage you need to be for growth. But again, if you're going to freak out, like, don't freak out if your account goes down $50. Don't stare at it all day. Like, no. But again, it's all a personal decision, personal preferences. Like, if the market crashes, are you selling and just taking your losses, or are you buying more?
Yep.
What are you going to do? And that's a personal thing. Like, me personally, let's buy more because that's going to go back.
Absolutely. This is Robert Branson. He's a sophomore, and he asked, "What's the biggest challenge you face in your occupation?"
Oh, that's easy. It's attracting clients. And I'm in Knoxville, right? So, we obviously have an airport, but we got to get to meet these guys. And how do we meet them from here? And then, like, okay, well, I'm just another guy. Like, I'm 31, right? I was just a young guy trying to get this guy's money. And how do we instill trust immediately? Which, that part's easy once we get in the door, but so many of these athletes have so many people in front of them, as they should, that it's tough to get a hold of them and get to them. But if we can get the meeting, we feel good about getting the customer, because we know that we're going to do what's best. But getting through all the guardrails is definitely the hardest.
Yeah, and that's not just with athletes. That's with more and more people.
That's with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, and rightfully so, because again, it's all, we talk about protecting assets. You got to protect your time and you got to protect your space, which is I think all go hand in hand. I've got two more from the students. This is Modesty Carmichael. She's a freshman, and she asked, "What drew you to go into this profession?"
Honestly, like the way my brain works is I'm very numbers oriented and like logic based, and I'm not like a very emotional person. I tend to think, and so like financials is just it's another language. It makes sense to me, and I love sports. I nerd out over hoops, tennis, as you know, baseball. But I really nerd out over basketball. So getting to work with these guys and get to know them, and especially in NIL too, get to work with the guys. I kind of manage all the relationships, and getting to combine like my two passions and get to serve people like it's a no brainer for me.
Yeah, and again, and there's more and more females getting NILs too. So it's not just a male
Yeah,
dominated thing. Because look at Angel Reese at LSU. I mean, she just signed 5 NIL deals, and she's making a few
yeah,
$1 million as a
and,
senior college. So
and you got Livy down there too.
yeah, so that there are definitely, and this is even in the smaller sports, because the gymnastics bunch is making a bunch of NIL money. So
Yeah,
it's not just the big time sports. There, for females or people that play smaller sports, there are still opportunities. And like we said, even on the small college level, I know my friends at Mississippi College on the track team, they have NIL. So it really can be quite lucrative for you to take that next step.
absolutely.
This is the last one from the students. This is Keisha Daughtry. She's a sophomore, and she asked, "How do you manage your work time and your personal time? Because you're obviously very busy."
It's working in investments, like obviously during the day. So my first couple hours of a day, I'm reading. Read and not like reading fiction, but I'm reading, reading financial reports, what's going to happen that given day. And then, I don't, so I personally don't manage any trades. My business partners do all that. I let them handle it. So um, most of my time is in meetings, and it's really like my friends tell me like I don't really work, which is not true. But because of what I do, like a lot of my meetings can be like on the golf course.
Wow.
So I'm playing golf, but I'm playing golf, but I'm with a client or with a prospect, and we're talking, or someone else that's in my field, and we're talking about whatever. A lot of my meetings are dinner. So I don't have typical hours. Like I kind of so we don't, like in investments, we don't have set salaries, right? So it's on me, like my boss, my business partner. Like if I don't bring in clients, and he doesn't care because he doesn't have to pay me. So like basically it's I can do what I want, however I feel that I can do my job best, whether that's sitting behind the desk, whether that's from my couch, whether that's on the golf course, at a restaurant, whatever it is, as long as I'm out meeting with people and telling our story, basically.
Yeah, and that's also a great point, because one thing, and I know we're almost out of time, but I do want to hit on this,
Yeah.
because I know the financial aspect is very big, but you cannot make money if you cannot talk, if you cannot present yourself, if you cannot speak. You don't have to be the smartest person in the world. These kids get so mad at us because we make them talk in front of 10, 15 people. And it's not to be mean, but having that ability to communicate, having that ability to sell, whether you're speaking to 100 people or speaking one-on-one to somebody. If you're speaking one-on-one to somebody that can make you $1 million deal, you better know what you're talking about. It's not a time to be shy, and it's not a time to be unsure, because that could be the difference between a car and not a car. I mean,
Yeah.
So even though you have the financial knowledge and the degree, how much would you say of the communication side is into that as well?
A lot of it. It's huge. Like, and I'll be the first to tell you, like, I am horrible on the phone. Like, if I'm calling somebody, it's going to be bad. Like, it's just word vomit. Like, it's like Kevin Malone spilling the chili. Like, he tried hard, but like, it's not really, I'm horrible on the phone. But if I'm sitting at a restaurant or a bar, and I see someone I know walk in that I would like to talk to, I can go talk to them, no problem, and do very well with it. Just don't ask me to have a phone meeting, because I'm going to be awful. But if I'm in front of someone, even if I don't know them, have no fear. Just like being able to talk to people is so big. so important. Like the reason I can do it so well is like I started coaching AAU hoops at 14, and I'm having to manage parents and deal with it, and it taught me so much. And so now, like if you can deal with AAU parents at 14, like you're pretty much invincible. But it's fun, but being able to talk to people is absolutely critical. And again, it's not what you know, it's who you know, but it's really a combination of both in this field. Got to be intelligent
It's also who
and
knows
not make
you.
moronic decisions.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
Who knows you.
Right.
You may know them, but if they don't know you, you're out of luck. But and even if you're not going into any financial field, the face-to-face interaction and the communication is just so vital to success in any type of business. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for joining us, taking some time for us today. But before
thanks for having me.
These high school kids, they may think, talking about financial stuff is boring. I don't need to protect my retirement. I'm just 15, 16 years old. But why do they need to start thinking about that right now?
Because it starts right now. There's no set time. Like, I mean, the earlier you can start, the earlier you can stop working.
Absolutely.
And it's, why kick the can down the road when we can start today?
Absolutely. Great point. Well, Raleigh McCammon, all the way from Rocky Top in Knoxville, Tennessee, us repping
Go Vols.
And go Tigers, us repping us repping the SEC today. But again, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll talk to you soon, my man.
All right, appreciate you.